Welcome to Rays of Hope, where inspiration meets possibilities. Join us on this journey as we explore videos that illuminate the path to positivity, resilience, and success. This is part 2 of our guide on learned behaviors. Let's look at real-life examples, how they develop, and why they're so important. Schedules of reinforcement and their impact. Not all reinforcements are delivered the same way. The schedule of reinforcement refers to how often and when a behavior is reinforced. These schedules have a big impact on how quickly a behavior is learned and how persistent it becomes. Here are the main types. Fixed ratio, FR, schedule. Reinforcement occurs after a specific, predictable number of responses. Example. A worker gets paid for every 10 items they assemble. This often leads to a high rate of response because the reward is directly tied to output. Variable ratio, VR, schedule. Reinforcement occurs after an unpredictable number of responses. The average number of responses may be predictable, but not the individual instance. Example. Gambling is a classic example. You don't know how many times you have to pull a slot machine lever or buy a lottery ticket before you win. This schedule produces a very high and consistent response rate, and the behavior is very resistant to extinction. Why? Because you never know when the next reward is coming, so you keep trying. Fixed interval, FI, schedule. Reinforcement occurs for the first response after a specific, predictable amount of time has passed. Example. A weekly paycheck. You know you'll get paid every Friday, so work effort might increase just before payday. Variable interval, V, schedule. Reinforcement occurs for the first response after an unpredictable amount of time has passed. Example. Checking your email for a response. You don't know exactly when you'll get a new message, so you check periodically. This leads to a steady, moderate rate of response. Different schedules create different patterns of behavior. For instance, behaviors learned under variable schedules are generally much harder to extinguish than those learned under fixed schedules. This explains why habits formed through unpredictable rewards, like checking social media for new notifications, can be so strong. Observational learning. Learning by watching. Have you ever learned a new dance move by simply watching someone else do it, or picked up a new skill just by observing an expert? This is observational learning in action. It's a powerful way we acquire new behaviors, skills, and even attitudes, often without any direct practice or immediate reward. We learn by seeing what others do and what happens to them as a result. This process highlights just how much our social interactions shape who we become. Albert Bandura's social learning theory. No one understood observational learning better than psychologist Albert Bandura. He developed social learning theory, arguing that much of our learning comes from observing others within a social context. He famously illustrated this with his Bobo doll experiment in the early 1960s. In this study, children watched an adult interact with a large inflatable doll, the Bobo doll. One group of children saw the adult behave aggressively towards the doll, hitting it, punching it, and yelling at it. Another group saw an adult play non-aggressively. What happened next? When the children were later given the chance to play with the Bobo doll, those who had seen the aggressive adult were significantly more likely to imitate that aggressive behavior. They didn't just copy the actions, they sometimes added their own aggressive acts, showing that learning wasn't just about mimicry but about understanding and adapting observed behavior. This experiment showed that we can learn simply by watching, even without personal reinforcement. Bandura identified 4 key processes involved in effective observational learning. Attention. First, you have to pay attention to the model. If you're not focused on what someone is doing, you won't learn much. Think about how children often watch their parents closely. Retention. Next, you need to remember what you observed. This means storing the information in your memory. We retain behaviors by mentally rehearsing them or coding them into easily recalled symbols. Reproduction. Once you've paid attention and remembered the behavior, you need the ability to reproduce it. This involves converting your observations into actions. For example, if you watch someone tie a complex knot, you then have to physically try to do it yourself. This might require practice and refinement, motivation. Finally, there has to be a reason or motivation to perform the learned behavior. Even if you've paid attention, retained the information, and can reproduce the action, you might not do it unless there's an incentive. This motivation can come from seeing the model rewarded, expecting a reward for yourself, or avoiding punishment. Mirror neurons and empathy's role. Have you ever seen someone yawn and immediately felt the urge to yawn yourself? Or watched a movie character get hurt and flinched as if it happened to you? This isn't just empathy, it might be due to mirror neurons. These fascinating brain cells were discovered in the 1990s by Italian researchers studying monkeys. They noticed certain neurons in the monkey's brain fired not only when the monkey performed an action, like grasping a nut, but also when it simply observed another monkey or human perform the same action. The discovery of mirror neurons opened up a new way to understand observational learning. While still a subject of ongoing research, many scientists believe these neurons play a crucial role in understanding others' actions. They may help us simulate and comprehend what someone else is doing. Empathy. By firing when we see someone else experience an emotion or sensation, mirror neurons might help us feel what others are feeling, fostering empathy. We essentially mimic their experience internally. Social learning. When you watch someone perform a new skill, your mirror neurons might activate as if you're doing it yourself. This internal rehearsal could make it easier to learn and reproduce the action later. This neural mechanism provides a biological foundation for our incredible capacity for social learning. It suggests that our brains are hardwired not just to observe, but to literally mirror the actions and intentions of those around us. This mirroring makes it easier for us to learn from others, to connect with them on an emotional level, and to navigate our complex social world through observation and imitation. Cognitive learning, beyond simple associations. Sometimes, learning isn't just about direct rewards or punishments, or even mirroring what others do. Our brains are incredibly good at more complex mental tasks. This includes things like understanding hidden connections, solving problems suddenly, and even learning without anyone knowing we have until much later. Cognitive learning goes beyond basic stimulus-response connections. It shows how our minds actively process information, form mental structures, and use reasoning. Thank you for joining us on this uplifting journey with Rays of Hope. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more videos that spark hope and empowerment. Until next time, keep shining brightly. Thank you for watching.